And it was on this day, May 27th, 2022, that I finished Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, which is a pseudonym for 2 authors. I finished it pretty quick for a chunk, a very tall chunk book. It does have really big font, to be fair, but it was so good. I know I do that every time, but as you will see when we get into non-spoilers, I mean, what I will say right off the bat before non-spoilers is that I totally went into the series with every wrong expectation, because I don't know where I heard it, but I heard like some things about the series, and I was like, oh, so it's gonna be like the moon and Earth and Mars politics, and there's gonna be like a political figure and like maybe like a pirate, or oh, maybe it will be like very focused on like the social aspect and how things are in terms of like, look, people are fine with everything else and it's not gendered or anything. All of that, I was wrong. All of it. So whatever made me get that impression, don't know what gave me that impression, but the impression was wrong, which made for this being an even more interesting journey. So just wanted to say that before getting into non-spoilers, is that not only did I come into the series not knowing anything, I came into the series knowing negative things, because right off the bat I realized, oh, I had the wrong idea. Also, the prologue says it all. You read the prologue and you're like, oh, this is a lot more serious than I thought. So, non-spoilers. We get right on into it. Alright, so I have 6 sticky notes written here. 4 of them are non-spoilers. Well, 4.5 of them are non-spoilers. So, I have a lot to say. But really, to start off, all I have to say is, hell yes. Space military? Hell yes. Space fighting? Hell yes. Space jujitsu? Hell yes. Space grenade launchers? Fuck yes. Are you kidding me? This is the coolest shit. It's so... I mean, it's not cool, but it's pretty fucking cool to read, and oh my god. All of it's cool. The fact that we could colonize the moons around Jupiter and Saturn and the belt. Frick yes! Oh my goodness. The first 2/5 of this book was some of the most awesome shit I have ever read ever. And I was giddy. I was having an absolute blast at the beginning of this book. Every time something happened, I was like, even if it was a terrible, terrible thing that happened, I was like, because I was so excited to read something like this. I've never read anything like this before. This is brand new to me. Space opera, never read it before. And space grenade launchers. Spaceships fighting, you see Star Wars, but I've never read something like Star Wars, and also more realistic and not fantasy like Star Wars. It's built in realism, and so it's that much cooler. Oh, it's so good. Whew. Okay. So, again, the first 2/5 of this book was some of the greatest shit I ever read, ever. And I would extend that to the full book, but I'm not going to go that far. We'll get there. But, again, the world building, right off the bat, the world building and, I guess the system building as well, because, there's more than one world, is awesome. And, figuring out, oh, there's some, really cool ships. Ooh, this is, the status. Ooh, there's still, mobs and stuff. Ooh, this is, the politics of this area. Every single little tiny tidbit of, the history and the status of the world, the worlds, the status of the system. gobbled that up. That was freaking amazing and awesome. And they even paid attention to like little tiny details, like, oh, there was this one like radiation thing, or like what happens when you have experienced too many G's, and all these different things. They even pay attention to tiny details. I know those are bad examples, but there's one scene I remember where there's a one sentence, like really, really tiny detail that they addressed. And it was like, I was dumbfounded. So they did an amazing job. And I love this book so much. To continue the train of rambling, mystery plot? Detective? Hell yes. Like, there was a detective plot. I was not expecting a detective plot, but there was a detective plot. And there was like a full-on mystery, like trying to like figure out all the clues and everything, but it was that exact like, these clues don't make sense kind of mystery, and it was fantastic. And also the plot had a lot, and I mean a lot, of what the fuck moments, or moments where you're just like, and it was great. It was amazing, and I love those. Every single time I get a jaw drop. I had so many in this book. It was fantastic, like fantastic. And so, what the fuck moments galore. They were great. Something I wrote here is that the authors really hit hard and fast, especially, you know, the prologue. Right off the bat, you get the idea. They are blunt. They aren't afraid to say things, and it's fantastic. It's not like grimdark, and it's not, I was gonna say it's not that gory, but I mean, you know, they weren't afraid to say things, and I reveled in it because I like when authors aren't afraid to say things. And so that was freaking amazing. And also, and in general, they were blunt on like themes as well. And again, I'm not like a theme-based reader, but in like this book demands themes. I'm not going to give away why, but when you bring up subjects like that, there's themes inherently, and they are blunt in addressing like the morals behind it, and like the opinions, and like this is how humans would react. And the fact that it's so believable is what makes this book that much more powerful, is because I can fully see humans doing that, even though it's absolutely terrible. And so, just another like plus in like how much it's built in realism. Oh my god, it's so good. Okay, what else did I read? Great chapter cliffhangers all the time. A lot of those what the fuck moments were like right at the end of a chapter, and then you would have to switch perspectives, and you're like, no. Right as you're like switching perspectives. That happened a lot. Oh, and it was great. Pretty much this book went straight onto my list of favorite books I've ever read. Right off the bat. It's on there. It wins. It wins. It's on there. It's like space Codex Alera to me. And I know that people don't cherish Codex Alera as much as I did, but it's space Codex Alera. And even more wider scale than Codex Alera. And I thought that was huge scale. Boy, was I wrong. Oh my god. It's just so cool. And the entire, like, over halfway through, I was like, how is this series 9 books? There's 8 more of this book. Of this series, of this world. Ah! 8 more! See, the entire time I was like, man, this gives, like, the vibe of a trilogy. But there's 8 more. List of favorites. It's on there. It wins. It won. It won all the challenges. Oh, man. Okay. What else did I have? Oh, okay. I do actually have something helpful to say. This is one of the very first times that I've never had a character stand out to me. Like, between all the characters, like, none of them, like, stood out more than the rest to me, and none of them like just hit the line that I qualify as like a favorite character. Just none of them reached it. They were all amazing characters and all like very well written. I mean, okay, I say all amazing characters. All the main characters are amazing characters and well written, and they really covered like all the bases, made sure people had flaws and like their opinions and morals to the point that they really stood as ordinary people. And I know that might sound not good, but I mean in a good way. I mean that they all just sounded like the basic people you would find in these situations. And I think that's fascinating and awesome that they were able to do that and have that like all their varied backgrounds, but still like not be in a situation they were prepared for, and just stand as regular people, just with their own opinions and their own prejudices and backgrounds and all those things. And I love just how clear that came across. I really don't know how else to explain that, but there isn't like a character that stands out as like being like badass because of their powers like you get in fantasy, and there isn't a character that stands out for being like super charismatic or powerful or anything like that, because that doesn't really happen. I mean, you could say Fred, but he doesn't stand up to me. And so you don't even have those like badass like creepy but cool villains either. It's just people. And I really respect that, and I love how they did it. And so that's something that actually kind of dumbfounded me through the book. It was like, I realized that none of these characters really stand out to me in any way. They're just there, you know? And so I don't know if that's something that would change with future books, but the characters in this book, none of them as an individual excited me as much as having the group together, and that was more so what I cared about. And so that's interesting, because usually I will spend entire minutes ranting about my favorite characters or my least favorite characters, but in this case I can't. I don't have any. And so I think that's fascinating. Boop-a-doop. Again, I mean that in a good way. And here, the last thing I wanted to say, which leads into spoilers, which is on the same kind of subject, is that these authors did flaws right. And what I mean by that is not only do their characters have flaws, but also they show how like a positive flaw, like a flaw that people would think are a good thing to have in someone, can still come across negative and cause a lot of negative things just because how positive it was. I don't know if that makes sense without, reading the book, but not only did these authors make sure to like mix the flaws in there like pretty thoroughly and make sure like these are things that these guys are bad at, and they're either conscious of it or they're not conscious of it, or the other person is, and all these people are trying to address their flaws and at the same time are struggling with their flaws. While all of that is happening, there's also flaws that, again, are like supposed to be like the good thing to have. They're supposed to be the good way to be in certain situations. And these authors showed how that sometimes isn't necessarily true. And I thought that was also amazing. So, on that note, we'll dive right into spoilers, talking about that very specific case I was talking about. So, this is your chance to leave. Chance to leave. Chance to leave. Okay. Holden. Holden. Is that how you say his name? I don't know. Captain Holden. He has a flaw, and that flaw gets dug into the entire book, particularly by Miller, but like the entire book, he is so righteous, is the word the characters use, that he thinks this is what needs to be done. This is what the way these things need to be addressed. Everybody needs to know that something bad is happening, and he will go and he will tell the world that something bad is happening. That's what a lot of us would think would be the right thing to do in some cases, I would believe. And then we see how that perspective that he has gets him into trouble gets the system into trouble over and over and over again each time he does it, because he's like, everybody needs to know, stop fighting, there's this issue, or there's this problem, or hey, this just happened, everybody needs to know this just happened, so they can be on the lookout and be aware that this happened. And when he goes out and he tells the world each time, there's that exact situation you see all the time in real life, and that is everybody misunderstanding or assuming or like using the information in a misleading manner. All of those things happen all the time in real life, and there's so much shit going on that we never hear about, because it would cause a lot of problems if we heard about it. And I think they just did such a good job with Holden doing that, and like Miller pointed out to him, why do you think it'll be different this time? Each and every time he's like, why do you think it'll be different this time? And I thought that was great. It was just so well done, and the fact, like, it's realistic. Like, that is something that would 100% happen, and I love that right off the bat Holden is like, feels so good about himself. The very first time with the Canterbury, he feels so good about himself when he announced that to the world, and the first thing Miller does in his perspective is like, idiot. Like, right off the bat, he's just like, this idiot did not think in like another perspective. He did not think outside the box. And I think that's one of the biggest things I notice with a lot of these characters, is that a lot of them don't think outside of their own perspective. They just think from what they believe and what they see and about their like version of life. In Miller's case, like, he always thinks in terms of like the belt, because that's what he's focused on. He's always talking about how he and the other people at Belt are different, and that's a big part of his perspective. But in the case of like Holden, a big part of his perspective is like doing the right thing. And even when he did want to get revenge, he wanted to get revenge like he has this like spike of like wanting to murder the people who did it wrong, or making the people who did wrong like super guilty. But then it moves over to this like, no, everybody needs to be tried in court kind of case. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating how all the characters like are so diverse but like locked in their perspectives, and how it causes so much of the plot. It's just realistic. And the way that I want to put it is that this book was World War I in space. I'm not that knowledgeable in World War I. I mean, we only studied it a little bit in school, but my general impression was that one country said one thing, another country got blamed for another thing, the first country got blamed for another thing, and nobody knew who started it. Like, nobody knew. We attribute it to like the assassinations of some people usually, or some other events, but apparently it's building up for a while. Like, there's all these different factors that fly around in World War I, and then all of a sudden there's all these countries looped into it. And it was just a really confusing war, especially at the beginning, because it's like one thing happened, then another thing happened, another thing happened, and it's like just war broke out. That's exactly what happened in this book from my perspective, is that, hey, the Canterbury just got blown up. Hey, this Mars ship just got blown up. And then, like, everybody's pointing fingers and accusing and starting war without actually focusing on the people who did the event itself. So if it was the assassination that started World War I, let's say, they hunted down the country and started war with the country. I'm not saying this happened, but this is something I'm saying to link back to the book, when they should be looking for the person who assassinated them, like the attacker, and try the attacker. And so I think that's kind of the way this book is structured, is that there's this group that's causing all these problems for all these people and causing this war between groups when it's between countries or worlds or whatever you want to call them, I suppose. And it turns out that the entire time, that one ship, or the one, like, science group, Protogen, is what should have been tried in the first place. So I just thought it was fascinating. This really came across as, like, Space World War I. And it's freaking awesome. Alright. This is going to be one of my shortest spoilers ever, by the way. I should have said at the beginning, but I don't have much to say, other than I fucking love this book. But what I will say is that did not at all expect aliens or horror genres or themes at all in this book. I did not think aliens would come up at all in this series. I thought this was going to be all about, like, human politics. And it still is mainly about human politics and focusing on, like, what humans do when there is a thing perceived to be of another world and, like, having that whole issue. And so I think it's fascinating and it's really interesting, but again, I just never expected it. I was not prepared for it. And so when the first zombies came out, I was like, wait, what? I had this whole moment. I mean, like, Julia's corpse, like, that, I was like, ooh, space sickness. But then when the zombies came out, I was like, okay, zombies? Again, I wasn't ready for that, but also, after letting it settle in throughout reading the rest of the book, I think I like it. And so that's why earlier in the video I said I love the first 2/5 of this book. After 2/5 was when, like, the zombies and that stuff happened, and I was very confused about my opinion. But I think after letting it set, I do like the idea. And the fact that there's, like, crystal spires growing out of Venus, I want to know where it goes. And so I think that is fascinating. But again, like, I came into this book with all the wrong expectations in the first place anyway. So all that really needs to be said is that as soon as the Canterbury exploded, I was hooked on this series. Like, that was all I needed to be hooked. And now I'm invested. I'm very excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to meet more people or see, like, more perspectives or that stuff. Because in this one, we were pretty much mainly in the belt. I'm kind of curious what goes on elsewhere. I don't know, we will see, but I'm a little curious. Mars gave a good impression with the Mars ship before it exploded too. The Donager, that was cool. Everything was cool. Oh man. I cannot believe I read a 561-page book. It's a great book. I don't know what else to say. It's a great book. Again, not at all what I expected, but morals, war. What even else at that point? I mean, gambling, like, it's interesting, like, the mob bosses and, like, those things were, like, fascinating to think about, or, like, how free certain liberties were, or, like, what certain societies, like, the Earth group was called, like, the UNN, and, like, Mars was called the something something Mars Coalition, and then OPA was the Belt. That was interesting. Like, there's so much interesting stuff going on. And internal politics, I love that they acknowledge, hey, there's also internal politics, and there's people who could speak for a group wrongly, and then people assume they are, like, that group, they are representing that group, when the rest of the group is like, wait, what the fuck? And so I think that is best acknowledged in that scene where I think Mars blows up Phobe into pieces with a bunch of nuclear space nukes, with a bunch of nuclear, like, weapons. They just blow up Phobe. Is that how you say it? I bet it's not. Phoebe? Something, however you say it. I should know this. I'm in a space degree, but whatever. And the way I think it's Miller, but it may be Holden. One of those two characters thought about it, was like, well, I'm glad that at least some person on Mars did the right thing, even though I'm sure other people on Mars wanted to do the wrong thing. So they acknowledge, hey, even though there's this group, and one of the many heads of this group did this thing, that doesn't mean the rest of the heads agreed with it. So I thought that was also great, because Lord knows our governments do not work cohesively. They do not work cohesively. So, amazing book. It's really good. I'm actually recommending it to my mom, and that doesn't happen often. So, yeah. It's a great book. Nothing else to say. Alright, with that, we head into what's new and what's next. Are you surprised? Like, are you surprised? I'm not. How many pages are you? 595. Oh, it's even more. Oh. This book's actually, like, it feels brand new. This one actually was, like, bent around the covers and stuff when I got it. This one, it's got the sharp corners. It's been unopened. It's called Caliban's War. I would say something, but it might already be getting into spoilers on the first series, so I won't say it. But I'll probably... Ooh, new character! I will probably start this book tonight, let's be honest. But I will not promise that I'll finish that one as fast as this one, because towards the end I started to feel that slowness of reading too much too fast. And so I'm going to dive into video games a little bit more in the next few days, and just be careful with my reading pace so that I don't burn out reading, because I do not want to burn out reading. I want to keep reading. So there's the hope. Job. I did an interview today. I have 2 more interviews for that specific opportunity and a few more. And so it's kind of a little bit shaky, but we're figuring it out. So jobs will be soon, and that means less reading. And so I do also want to make progress reading before I do start working. So there's the balance, and that's where we are at. Another thing, though, is that if I do get tired of this, or I reach a slow bit, I'm not saying that will happen, because this first book, a slow bit did not exist. It was nonstop. But if, supposedly, there was a slow bit in this book, then I would continue my Codex Alera reread, which I have until next week to finish doing. I actually already reread this one, I just forgot to get the next one out. Oops. But I'll also be doing my Codex Alera reread as a getaway. I do not know if I'll be able to read all 9 books of The Expanse in, like, a row, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if I could read all 9 books of The Expanse without diving into another series in the middle. And so I've been playing with the idea of, like, what series would I want to toss in the middle of this? Especially since this is sci-fi, I would want to balance it out with a fantasy series, but I haven't been able to figure out which one yet. I think it might be a bit much to dig out Faithful and the Fallen and these, because both of those series are this size. Faithful and the Fallen gets really fucking big, especially with Ruin. Ruin is a chunk book, and so I don't want to dive into that while I'm in this. But at the same time, I mean, my other options are Robin Hobb, or I'm not going to get into Abercrombie or Red Rising. Like, that's not going to happen yet. I'm waiting. I don't know. We might break into Arcanium Unbounded and Warbreaker. Ooh, that's actually a really good idea, because that's a standalone. I will think about it, but I don't think I'll be able to read all 9 of these books in a row, but I think I'll get 3. I think 3, maybe 4, at least, maybe 5 if I'm lucky, will be enough before I reach that point, and so we'll talk about that later down the line. I do not own any new books, and I don't have any more announcements, other than that I got a puppy, but you know, that's off topic, but we got a puppy. Oh, okay, alright. This was a review of Leviathan Wakes. And I know it's a very weak review, because pretty much all I said is that I fucking love this book, but also, I love this book. So, I may watch the series afterward. I know I always said that I, like, hate TV, and I do hate TV, but I might watch it anyway, because I kind of just want to see this stuff happen. I think that'd be crazy. So, I may watch it. We'll see when we get there. Have a good one. Bye-bye.